So welcome everyone. This is our core yoga class, and we're going to start this afternoon lying down on our mats in constructed rest. As you're getting organized towards that end, you might also want to have a scarf, yoga strap, or belt. And if you don't care to weight bear on your knees, that steady and sturdy chair will be quite helpful. So those are the props, mostly the strap. You want to make sure you have that for practice today. And as you come to lie down on your back, knees bent, feet on the floor, try to just arrange yourself so that your spine, hips, and knees are at their most comfortable angle. And I want to set up today's class by talking about our lower back. A lot of us have lower back tenderness. We put our backs out. It's a very, very common issue. And as we've been a little bit more sedentary through the pandemic, through no fault of our own, it's just the way lifestyles have gone, we may find that our lower back is a little bit more at risk for injury because of this more sedentary lifestyle. So I wanted to do probably a big antidote class for sedentary lifestyle. So we're going to be focusing on what's called in yoga back bending. I really don't like that term, back bending. I would rather call it spinal extension. And we're going to be looking at a number of poses that involve spinal extension. They are wonderful poses. A lot of times, if you get up from sitting or working in the garden, you'll do this spontaneously. Put your hands on your low back and stretch your back into a little bit of an extension. So you know inherently that it feels good to do that movement, but it also helps to massage the discs in your back in the opposite way to what they're normally held in a seated position. So it's a great antidote for sitting. But we want to really look at the lumbar curve, the lower back today, and really study how to keep that lower back safe and happy throughout our spinal extension posture. So we're going to start right here in constructed rest. Again, finding that angle of your knees, hips, and the alignment of your back that's most comfortable. So you don't have to have your feet close to you. They can be a little bit away from you and from each other. And we'll start just by noticing how your spine is aligned to the ground. So doing a little tour of the spine, if you will. Notice the tailbone right down there, the base of your spine. And just above the tailbone is your sacrum. That's the wide kind of triangular flat bone. In this position, you feel it kind of pressing into the ground. And then there's a little place where your back curves away from the floor. This is your lumbar arch. Now there are 5 vertebrae in the lumbar arch, and they are particularly vulnerable because of our engineering to injury or being in danger. So we're really going to focus on that lumbar arch today. And then if you keep moving up the spine around the area of the shoulder blades, you'll notice the spine once again pushes firmly to the floor. That's your thoracic spine. And then we come up into the curvature of the neck, where the spine once again waves away from the floor in a curve. The lumbar curve is related to the neck curve. And when your lumbar curve is not feeling good or injured, there's a chance that that will relate to tension in the neck, headaches, jaw pain, things like that. So what we do in the lumbar spine affects the rest of the spine, obviously. So it's good to pay attention to it. Now, if you'd like, you can take one hand to the belly, if that's a comfortable adjustment for you, and begin to breathe in and out through your nose if possible, and in a way where you start to notice some movement under your hand. So we begin to breathe a little bit more completely here, a little bit more thoroughly, noticing that the belly may expand slightly on the inhale and fall back to the floor a bit on the exhale. This isn't something that we're forcing. It's just happening because that's the way your body mechanics work when you breathe. Now, if you pay attention to that lumbar curve as you breathe, You may notice that it flattens very slightly on the inhales, and then it kind of comes back to its normal curve on the exhale. Because what happens when you inhale is the whole abdominal cavity swells a little bit like a balloon opening. And on the exhale, we're trying to gather the musculature closer into the center line of the body. So that's a real core awareness exercise, feeling the shape change in the lumbar spine as you breathe. So maybe try a breath or two more, keeping your focus on the lumbar area. And then we'll move a little bit to get organized for this. Do you have a pillow? I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. A pillow, a block, a book, anything that you can grab quick, and just place it underneath your left foot. So you want to stretch out your left leg and elevate it slightly. So anything that can prop it up, a stack of magazines, whatever. Now try to keep the knee facing up towards the ceiling, toes facing up towards the ceiling, and then at your own time, gather the right knee in towards your chest. Interlace your fingers behind the right thigh and direct the kneecap kind of a bit towards the right collarbone. So we're not exactly like going completely passive here. We're directing the left leg to stay neutral in the hip socket. So the kneecap and the toes are facing to the ceiling, but the foot is a little bit elevated. And then please go back to being aware of your lumbar spine as you breathe in and out. See if you can connect again to that subtle shape change in the low back as you go through your natural but slow breath cycle. One more breath here. And then you can release the right foot to the floor, bend the left knee. Just move your prop to the right side of your mat so you can stretch out your right leg now. Again, kneecap, toes facing towards the ceiling. So the leg is heavy and relaxing, but it's not completely like melting to the ground. And then draw your left knee in toward your body, hands interlaced behind the left thigh. If it's difficult to make the connection between your fingers, that's where you can get your strap working already. Kneecap is directed a bit towards the left collarbone here. And let's take our awareness back to the low back. Breathing in and out. One more breath. And then drop the left foot to the floor. Bend your right knee again. And reach around for your strap or scarf if you haven't got that in play already. Let's go back to your right leg. Draw your right knee in and take the strap around the ball of your right foot. Extend the leg straight. So you can use as much of the strap or scarf as you want to so that you can get that leg perfectly straight. Again, take a peek at your right leg. You'd like the thigh bone neutral in the hip socket so that the kneecap and toes are facing straight back behind you. They're not out on an angle. Now, before we do anything in hand to big toe pose, because we are going to do a few things here, could you please revisit your lumbar spine and make sure that your back is not completely smashed into the floor, that you still have the same curvature, little bridge down there, that you did when your knees were bent and feet were on the floor and you were relaxing. So there's still room for your low back to move as you breathe. So often we focus on getting a big sexy stretch here and we just basically push the low back into the floor. We're really not working the core. So today it's core yoga. We're really thinking about that. Once you have your alignment, let's inhale, extend the ankle joint so you're pushing the ball of the foot against the strap. And then exhale, flex the ankle, pull the toes back to the shin. Now, as you move through this range of motion with your ankle joint, watch your low back. Keep your low back steady and firm. So you're gently contracting core muscles to stabilize as you move the ankle. This is good practice if you like to go walking and hiking. You're learning how to get flexibility into the joints where it's supposed to be, the feet, and not overusing your low back muscles, which many of us do. Let's do a couple more breaths here. And then keep the foot in a flexed position and begin to drop the leg out to the side of your mat. So the right leg's moving out to the right. Watch your sacrum, watch your low back. Keep all of that steady as you stretch your right leg out to the side. So you may notice that the angle of your low back wants to change as you do this. So reestablish core stability and then take the stretch of your leg from a stable core. So you're not torquing or twisting the low back in order to get into this position. Can we be here for one more breath? And then come back up to center. Let's drop the feet to the floor. And then can you observe the two sides of your low back here? The right leg, the leg you were just working with, you may find that that low back curve is flatter to the floor, even in your original constructed rest position. So you can see the relationship of the low back muscles to what you do in your legs. Let's move on to the left leg now. So we want to get that leg straight. So use as much tie or strap as you need to. Toes and knees pointing in the same direction, directly back behind your head, not out to the left. Check in with your low back curve. It's almost like you want to take your sitting bones and roll them towards facing the floor. So you get a nice little curve in your low back. And then once you've got yourself stabilized, move your ankle joint. Inhaling, pointing your toes. Exhaling, bringing the toes into the shin. Back and forth. Being quite precise with your movements, as this is an opportunity to really teach your body how to move through your day without taking an undue toll on your low back. Let's take one more breath here. And then keep your ankle in a flexed position and begin to drop the leg out to the side. So as you drop the leg out to the left, watch very carefully the angle of the curve of your lumbar spine, the pressure under the right side of your hips. Keep things stable using your core muscles as you drop the left leg out. There's no benefit really to really pushing yourself to a deep stretch if it means you're pulling on your low back. That's just going to destabilize that whole structure, and the engineering of your body already made it a little bit vulnerable. You don't need to add to that. Let's take one more breath here. And then let's come back up to center, bringing both feet to the floor, back into the original posture of the practice, noticing that maybe both sides of your low back feel slightly more released now. Rolling to the side and pressing up from the ground. Let's come to table pose. Now we'll be doing a bit of work in table pose. So if you don't care to weight bear on your knees, you'll want to get your chair and put your hands on chair and just stand on your feet. So make sure there's lots of space between your arms and your legs so you have room to move your spine. And let's go between a spinal extension and a spinal flexion. Give a little bend to the elbows. And if you're standing on your feet, little bend to the knees. And then as you inhale, reach the chest forward through the arms, but simultaneously push the tailbone to the wall behind you. So you feel this stretch from the pubis bone to the navel, navel to the chest, chest to the middle of the throat. There's a lengthening, a stretching. So the belly's not dumping to the ground, and the curve in your lumbar spine is on the same plane as all the other curves. So it's one continuous smile when you look at the spine from the side. This is the inhale position. And on the exhale, we want to flip that upside down, coming into cat stretch, and move back and forth. Now, let's keep a lot of awareness in the lower back as we're doing this. Through this range of motion, we'd like almost a neutral feeling in the low back rather than a lot of strong sensation. So on the exhales, it's not a big, huge pulling or stretch. And on the inhale, there's no pinching or compression. It's kind of neutral. The lower back feels the same as the middle back and the neck. Everything's getting equal attention. This is a really big principle when you're doing these spinal extension postures in yoga, that there's an even movement along the whole spine, not a kink just in that lumbar region. Let's take one more full breath. And then we can take a break in prayer pose or child's pose. If you're using a chair, you can just turn around and sit down in a chair. But this might be a good opportunity to wiggle the fingers, make fists, roll the wrists around in both directions. Kind of stretch a little bit this way and a little bit that way, kind of like you see cats and dogs doing. Good. And then when you're ready, we'll return to table pose, but take your time to get set up. Now, this is a pose I know you've seen before, lifting the leg on the inhale and then bringing the knee in on the exhale. And many flexible people like to really exploit their low back as they do this posture. So let's just look at this another time with fresh eyes to make sure that we're really using core stabilization muscles and letting the leg be the flexible part, not the back. So let's start with the right leg. From table pose, lift the right leg, bring it level with your hip. Now take a moment to notice that the knee and the toes on your right side are pointing straight down to the floor, not out to the side. Feel the bumper bone on the right side and hug the bumper bone over to the left bumper bone. It's like there's magnets on these two frontal bones and they're pulling towards each other. You're almost internally rotating your right leg. Holding your leg here, you should start to feel your buttocks muscles get a little tired. Now we know we're in the right zone. This is the inhale. On the exhale, draw the knee in, but keep your low back as neutral as possible. Don't go into a big cat stretch. Keep your low back pretty neutral. Try that with the breath now. Inhale, extend. Exhale, bring the knee in, but keep the back pretty level to the floor. If you had a bowl of soup resting on your spine, it wouldn't spill. When you do this posture in this way, it's really a core strengthening posture. There's a lot of work to be done with the stabilization muscles. Let's do one more breath here. And then let's take a break. Child's pose, prayer pose. If you're seated in a chair, you can still be just stretching out your hands and wrists a little bit. Stretching like a cat does a little bit. And then we'll come back and we'll do the left leg. All the same things apply here. So when you're ready, lift the left leg even to the floor. Exhale, bring the knee into the chest. Remember, you're keeping the left knee and the left toes facing towards the ground. The left bumper bone has a magnet on it, pulling towards the right bumper bone. So you're engaging those deep girdle muscles to help you stabilize your core. And when you do this posture with these sort of things in mind, your glute muscles get sore, right? The great thing about spinal extensions is they really work that posterior chain of energy. Let's take one more breath. And then take a break in your child's pose or your prayer pose or seated in your chair, something that you can kind of stretch your hands out, stretch your wrists out a little bit. We have one more pose on all fours. And again, this is a wonderful challenge for our core muscles. And I'm hoping you're starting to feel a little bit of engagement, a little bit of feedback from the low belly muscles. They really do work very hard to help keep your low back safe. Okay, so let's go back to the right leg. Do exactly what you did before. So extend the leg parallel to the floor. It's almost an internal rotation of the right thigh, right bumper bone, magnetize towards the left. Find your lower belly muscles, stabilize, and then can you lift the left arm? The left arm's alongside the ear, thumb pointing up. Reach your right heel back, your left fingertips forward, extend the spine. Can you be here for 2 more breaths? This is quite a balance challenge. And then let's try the other side. Extending the left leg, almost an internal rotation of the left thigh bone. Left bumper bone magnetized towards the right. You're feeling your left gluteus muscles engage, left hamstrings are working. And then when you're ready and stabilized, extend the right arm alongside the ear, palm facing inward. Lengthen on the diagonal. Can we take 2 more breaths here? And then release. Let's come to lie on our side. I'm going to suggest lying on your right side. I'm just adjusting my blanket so I have cushioning underneath me. You might find that helpful. And you'll also want your strap or your scarf for this as well. You can bend your right arm just to create a pillow, or you can actually put a pillow underneath the side of your head. Whatever you need. And then when you're ready, knees stacked on top of each other. Relax as much as you can be. Take an inhale, let your top leg slide forward to the floor. And as you exhale, draw the leg back so that the knee is falling towards the floor behind the bottom leg. Now take your hand to your sacrum and try to make this movement without sliding your hips forward or back. So instead of rolling right to the floor, try to just bring your leg to the floor, but the 2 hip bones stay stacked on top of each other. So this really makes you work the glutes again instead of exploiting the flexibility of your low back. Let's do this for 2 more breaths. Inhaling as the leg slides forward, exhaling as it comes back. There we go. Now hold yourself, if you can, in the exhale position with the knee behind you. This is going to give you a little pull, I know, on the front of the thigh. So if it's very uncomfortable, then just let your knees stack on top of each other again, but do the best you can. I'm kind of pushing forward a little bit with my hand on the left buttock, just to kind of keep my back long. Now you remember the cat-cow we do from all fours? Can you find a little of that action here? So this is your inhale position, and then your exhale position, and then inhale, and exhale. So you're trying to really get a little bit of movement in the upper spine, but keep the lower spine stabilized. It's very different Might feel really weird. Just try that once or twice more. And then find a nice neutral spine. So a spine that's long. And then we're going to take our strap. You may not need a strap, but most of us will feel more confident with that. Wrap it around the front of your left foot. Bring your knees so they're stacked on top of each other again. Your foot might be lifted slightly higher than your left knee. As long as you're not open like this, like a clamshell, you're doing the opposite. That's kind of what we're looking for. And then at your own leisure, as you feel ready, draw back on the left foot, pull the left knee back a little bit. You're in a side lying bow pose here. Keep tucking the tailbone down towards your kneecaps so that your low back stays spacious. Open the chest. Pull back on the left shoulder and widen the left collarbone. Now here's the last little piece. Can you find the left bumper bone and keep it magnetically pulling to the right bumper bone, even though the hip is pulling open into extension? Take 2 more breaths here if you can. And then you can release. Would you feel better rolling onto your belly or onto your back here? So your call, whatever way you'd feel better. Stretch out for a moment. And whether you're on the belly or on the back, notice the left side of your low back. Notice if it feels like there's, again, a little bit of a release there, or a little bit of kind of like when you work with plasticine and you make it more moldable. Does it feel more moldable back there? And then we'll roll over onto the left side of your body and we'll do the whole thing again. Exactly the same. So stacking the knees initially, keeping your right hip bone right on top of your left hip bone. So this relationship here doesn't really change. We're using our core stabilizers to keep the hips steady. Inhale, drop the top knee forward. Exhale, pull back. So your chest stays facing the side of the room. It doesn't face the ceiling or the floor at any time. It's just the leg that's changing its place in space and time. Your spine is really staying quite neutral. And even though this is a lying around on the floor pose, there's a lot going on, isn't there? Let's do this for 2 more breaths, bringing a little bit more liberation to the hip joint. This is the area that so many of us are really tight. Extension of the hip joint. And we're really isolating that here. Okay, let's move into using the strap then. So strap around the front of the right foot. Start with the knees together. Your right foot can float a little higher than the right knee. So you're internally rotated with the thigh bone. And then gradually, as your hip joint opens up, you can pull the foot back with the strap while dropping the right bumper bone forward, because the right bumper bone is being magnetically pulled down to the left bumper bone. You're using your girdle-like muscles across the front of your belly to hold things steady while you open up through the front of the thigh and the front of the right hip. Take a few nice deep breaths. Your tailbone's tucked under a little bit towards the back of your knees. So your low back is not pinching, it's not compressing, it's not kinking. There's a nice opening from the chest all the way down to the bottom of the spine. Last breath here. And then we can release strap. And we're making our way up to a standing position, up to mountain pose. So Take all the time you need. Be cautious with your movements because we've been really doing a lot of shifting around of the hip joints, etc. So things are changing. Okay, mountain pose. I'm going to come into a little vinyasa between mountain pose and forward fold. But again, I want to break it down today. A lot of us have been doing yoga for a long time. We get into habits and we don't always listen to the communication from our bodies. So I want to really highlight some of the potential habits that might not be serving us. So feet comfortable distance apart. They could be a little wider apart than your normal mountain pose for our purposes. And maybe moving the heels a little further apart than you did instinctively today. Taking your hands onto your low back, excuse my back, I just want to demonstrate. This is where we'd like our hands quite low, the heel of the palm, like level with the top ridge of your sacrum. So your fingers are curled over your buttocks. As you inhale, think about that nice even smile of your spine. It's an extension of the spine. Think an extension ladder like you have outside. So the chest is open and lifted, but the tailbone slightly tucked. Your gluteus muscles are engaged. So under your fingers, you feel a little firming of the muscles. This is the inhale. On the exhale, soften the knees. Run your hands over the glutes, down the hamstrings, down the calves, and towards the ankles as you forward fold. Inhale, come all the way up. Finish with your hands at your buttocks, an extension of the spine. And then exhale, hands down the back of the thighs. Inhale, come all the way up. And let's repeat this a few times. So when you're in your full spinal extension, the hands are supporting your back. And let's do that one more time. Then we'll come back up to mountain pose. And be honest with yourself about your back. How does it feel after that movement? So often we get into doing sun salutations quickly and we're not paying attention to the lumbar area so much. Now we're really highlighting it. So hopefully your low back feels more stabilized, feels the love. Let's turn sideways on the mat. Take your feet quite wide apart and work in triangle pose a little bit. So I'm going to start by externally rotating the right leg. So the kneecap is facing towards the short edge of the mat. Go back and look at your low back. Does it feel like it's twisted and torqued in an uncomfortable way? You may have to step the left leg an inch or so forward and internally rotate the left thigh in order to make the space in the low back that you need for this pose. So don't ignore the low back as you come into triangle. And because we're going to be really looking to your upper back mobility here, don't push yourself to get your hand all the way to the floor if it doesn't happen very, very naturally. Let's take a big inhale, feeling that balloon-like expansion to the chest, and exhale, come into our triangle pose. Dropping the top hand just to rest on the hip so we're not bothered by that top shoulder. We can really concentrate on the chest here. As you inhale, let's look down towards the bottom foot, pull back on the left shoulder blade. And as you exhale, bring the collarbones together and look up towards your left shoulder. Inhale, pull the left shoulder back, look down at the right foot. Exhale, bring the shoulder forward and look chin to shoulder. And you're moving your head as much as is comfortable here. Really looking for stability in the lower half of your body and flexibility in the upper part of the spine. Can you find your bumper bones and pretend they have magnets on them again? That will help engage the transversus abdominis, the deep girdle-like muscles that support your low back. Let's do this for one more breath. As you inhale, look down at your right foot for stability and come all the way up. Let's just take a pause with feet parallel. Now you may notice that the left side of your low back feels different than your right. So if you were laying flat on your back again, like you were at the beginning, you might notice a change in your lumbar curve. Let's externally rotate the left leg and set up for triangle on the second side, listening to your low back. It's a real focus for us tonight. Inhale, spread the chest. Exhale, come into Trikonasana. Release the arm to the top hip so we don't have to think too much about it. And next time you inhale, look down at your left foot, pull back on the right shoulder blade. Exhale, turn the chin towards the right shoulder, looking upwards a bit. And while we're doing this, we're keeping our hips very stable, really pushing our feet into the floor, grounding into the earth, finding flexibility in the upper body from that stability in the lower back. Let's take 2 more breaths here. And next time you inhale, looking down at the left foot for stability, we'll come all the way up. Turn the feet parallel and bring them together. So how is your low back feeling? Asking that question frequently throughout the practice today. So it's nice about being able to use yoga to really get to know yourself better. Now you'll want your strap again, I think. Do you have any wall space that you can use in your home? If you don't have a blank wall, maybe you can go to the back of your couch, or I'll demonstrate using a chair, but a wall would be preferable. So coming to align yourself so that your bumper bones are against the back of your couch or the wall, or I've got the chair here. Look down at your feet, make sure that they're parallel, heels even a little further apart than you thought they were going to be. Bend one knee and hook the strap around the front of the foot. So we did this lying on our side. Now we're doing this from a standing position. Now pay attention to the bumper bones. Try to align the bumper bones so they're even to the wall or the chair or the couch in front of you. Bring the knee into as much of a bent position as you can comfortably. You don't want to hurt your knee. And actively push the top of the knee towards the ground. So elongate the thigh bone. Lift your spine into extension. So you want to tuck the tailbone under a little bit. Activate the gluteus muscles. Widen the collarbones and lift the breastbone. So once again, you've increased the space between the pubis bone to navel, navel to breastbone, breastbone to the middle of the throat. Notice I haven't thrown my head back. The neck really isn't the focus here, but as we mentioned earlier, the neck and the lumbar spine have a real relationship. So we're extending the spine in one continuous arc, one nice smile. Make sure the standing knee has a little bend in it so your muscles are engaged. Can we hold here for one more breath? Standing quad stretch. And then releasing. You can step away from your prop for a second to check out mountain pose. And again, noticing the low back. It should feel quite neutral through all of this. Your legs and your butt muscles and your hamstrings might be getting tired, but your low back should be pretty bored with what we're doing. Let's try the other side. So mountain pose against the wall or the couch or chair. Hook the strap on the front of your foot. The knees are beside each other, and there's an active descension of the bent knee. It's actively trying to root down to the floor. You still have the magnets in your bumper bones, pulling the left and right sides towards each other like elevator doors closing. Bring the knee into as much bent as you can comfortably. but it's pointed straight down to the ground. You're trying to elongate the thigh bone to the ground. Let your tailbone be like a real tail. So you only have one foot in the ground, but you have a tail pushing into the ground. So you still have 2 points of contact. Open the chest, extend the spine. Let's take 2 more nice deep breaths here. And release back into mountain pose. Good work. So you can feel the benefits, I think, of making space in the vertebrae without kinking the low back. Now we're going to see if we can take that into full dancer pose now. If you find that your low back is touchy today, or you're so focused on balance you can't keep your mind on your low back, do what we just did. Don't come into full dancer. That might be for another practice another time. So I'm going to pretend the chair is still in front of me and try to maintain all those alignment points that we just practiced. So while I hook the strap around the front of the foot, push the bent knee down to the floor, I want to tuck the tailbone. I want to bring the bumper bones towards each other. I want a nice, long, even curve of the spine. Now you can use the chair or the couch or the wall as you did before, or you can work with me here, lifting the opposite arm, work on really reaching the knee, pointing to the ground, away from the fingertips. So you did this in bird dog pose on your knee. Now you're doing it standing, same principle, stretching on the diagonal. You can kick it up a notch if you want to by pushing your lifted foot into the strap and extending your spine on a tipping motion. Just make sure your low back stays spacious. You're not kinking in the low back. This is extremely demanding. You want to make sure your knee, your bent knee is pointing down, not out to the side. You're almost internally rotated in the lifted thigh bone. Try holding for 2 more breaths if you can. And then we'll return to mountain pose to assess how these back bends or how these spinal extension postures are affecting our low back. So again, when you come back to this neutral position, you should notice that your low back is bored. Your legs should be shaking, but your low back is bored. And then we can try the other side if you like. So remember, using the chair or the prop can be wonderfully helpful while you build the safe range of motion in your hips and the strength in your legs. Bumper bones coming together, tailbone extending to the ground like it is a real second point of contact. You can extend with the opposite arm. So this is like a bird dog pose that you did on hands and knees, but we're doing it standing. So the stretch on the diagonal. Keep that extension, keep that length to the spine as you kick the foot back into the strap and extend the spine. So from your angle, I hope you're seeing an even smile along the whole length of my spine. Can we be here for 2 more breaths? We're getting a bit tired, a bit wobbly, a little warm, but this is a wonderful uplifting practice, I find. Relaxing back into mountain pose. It's been a very gray, gloomy day here. So I find that extensions and back bending postures are a way to bring a little bit of warmth and sunshine. The next posture is moving towards lunge pose. I want to just show an option with the chair first in case weight bearing on the knee doesn't work for you. And you still can work all the points of the lunge, but without the strain on your knee. So I think you've seen this before, the lunge with the chair. So this would be your pose. And we'll talk into it and we'll talk about the various aspects of the pose that fit with tonight's theme. I'm going to use the blanket under my knees. You may also want a couple blocks under your hands, whatever you think. So let's bring the right foot forward into lunge. Basics here, knee over ankle, facing straight ahead over the toe. And now let's talk about our unique focus now on the core. So we want to tuck that tailbone under, engage a little bit in the left buttock, so it's not completely slack. Push down through the front of the left shin or the left ball of the foot, and push down under the right foot. So you're actively resisting gravity. That might give you the balance in order to be able to lift yourself up. Hands can be on the right thigh, or you can keep them on the chair or blocks. You want to tuck the tailbone. The tailbone provides like a third point of contact, engaged through the left buttock. Couple different ways to handle this now. You can stay right where you are. You can lift your arms. If you lift your arms, make sure that your tailbone stays tucked, left gluteus muscles engaged, so your back is extended in a nice even arc. Now here's some fun. You might want your strap, you might not need it. Do you want to lift up your left foot and bring your hands back to grab the strap or the foot and do a full bind? Now you want to really be conscientious of that low back. This is putting a lot more emphasis on the need to keep your bumper bones pulling towards each other, keep the tailbone tucked, open up into the chest. Wherever you are in your lunge, let's take one more breath. And then let's release. We can come to downward facing dog the old fashioned way. You can have your hands on the chair and step your legs back that way, or you can take a child's pose. What would you like to do? I'm going to take a downward dog because it just stretches out the hamstrings and the gluteus muscles beautifully after that spinal extension. In whatever posture you've chosen to kind of balance out your body, take 2 more breaths. And then let's come into the left foot forward lunge. So your hands could be on the chair here, blocks. You want to have your left knee right over top of your ankle, pointing straight ahead. Engage through the right butt cheek. Press down through your legs, so you're resisting gravity. And see if that will give you the buoyancy to lift your hands up to the left thigh. You can keep your hands on the chair if you want, or on blocks if you want. Tuck the tailbone under, keep your low back spacious. Engage even more firmly into the right butt cheek. Options here to extend into a full spinal extension with arms up. That's a lot of load on your back. Or if you want to get kind of funky, you can bend your knee a little bit more severely and hold on to your foot. Wherever you go, though, you want to be conscious of the low back. Tuck the tailbone under. Keep the right butt cheek engaged. Keep the bumper bones magnetized towards each other. Can we be here for 1 more breath? And then let's release to the posture you chose before. So I'll go back to down dog. Let's take 1 more breath here. And then let's lower down onto our bellies. I just want to show briefly, if you weren't too interested in being on your belly, you can follow along by using a chair or the back of your couch again. We're going to do half lotus pose. So you can do it with the chair like that. For those of us who are okay on the belly, let's stretch out, arms like Superman in front of you. Turn your palms to face each other, thumbs up, and extend your legs straight behind you, spreading the sacrum wide so that your legs are almost internally rotated. Take a couple breaths. Feel your low back moving. Remember we did that at the beginning? We felt the movement in the low back with our breath. See if you can recreate that now. From that organic movement in the low back, let's move into half locust. So inhale, lift your right leg, left arm, stretch them away from each other on a diagonal. Exhale, lower down. Inhale, lift your opposite leg and arm, other side, and lower down. You want to keep those bumper bones pulling towards each other and anchored to the floor. So the movement is in the arms and the legs and the hips and shoulders, not at the back. The back is not twisting and torquing. Let's go to each side one more time. And then releasing and rolling over onto your back. Bend your knees, stand your feet on the floor. So kind of back to constructed rest. If you were using a chair for that last little bit, take some time now and join us on the ground. We do a little bit of stabilizing work for the spine. We've been really kind of trying to open it in some tight areas. So when you're ready, inhale, lift your arms and your legs up towards the ceiling. Exhale, bend the knees into the chest and push the arms to the floor beside you. Inhale, extend, back flattened to the floor. Exhale, push down with your arms, fold the knees. Feel the spine retain its shape. Let's do that for a couple more breaths. Slowing down now, cooling down a little bit. One more breath. Then keeping the knees in towards the chest, open the arms out to the side of your body. You can have straight arms or cactus-shaped arms, whatever works better for you. Hug the legs together, like you're trying to hold a hard-boiled egg between your thighs. Inhale here, and as you exhale, point the knees towards the right, but try to keep the knees together. Inhale, come back to center, and exhale, point the knees towards the left. Again, knees hugging in at that hard-boiled egg. Shoulders press down to the floor. And we're just doing a little side-to-side rotation here. Just a little massage across the low back. We're trying not to pull too much at the low back. Sometimes this pose is a big stretch, and that's not really what we're after right now. Let's go to each side one more time. Come back to center, hug your knees in towards your chest. Last little bit of movement that I'm going to suggest here is a mandalasana. So as you inhale, separate your knees apart from each other. Exhale, push them away and bring them back around in a circle. Inhale, knees pull away. Exhale, they circle around to each other. Let's do one more in this direction. Find this can be really soothing for the low back. And then switch directions for the last 3 breaths here. So throughout your class tonight, you picked up on some really important principles to use your core stabilizers to protect your back. And you also did some really wonderful massaging for the discs of your low back. As you get ready to come to Shavasana now, and get your socks and sweaters back on, you might find it's easier than you expected to leave your legs stretched out flat on the floor. If you find that that's not the case, you can always pad under the knees or keep your knees bent. So when you're settled, take some time to let your bones sink towards the ground. Feel the muscles and soft tissue around the bones, letting go of them as you fully register the support of the ground. Body sinking to the earth. Softening. Letting go of unnecessary tension. Allowing a natural breath to flow in and out at its own organic pace. Feel that things are slowing down. Today's class was designed to be uplifting and brightening. You can hold on to that little warmth, that lighter sense of yourself, while really welcoming the support of the earth, the cushioning of the ground. Noticing the heaviness in your limbs as you feel the welcome from the ground, but also noticing the spaciousness and lightness that comes from riding the natural rhythm of your breath. Just taking a couple more breaths here, absorbing all that's unfolded during your practice. And if you have a couple more minutes to dedicate to Shavasana, it's a wonderful gift to give yourself. But if you need to move on to other things today, slowly animate your body with some subtle movement. Make your way to seated. Notice if it feels pretty effortless to sit up tall. Like there's really not a lot of work to that. And let's close our formal time together by sharing the sacred sound of Om. I'm inhaling now. Namaste. I'm going to stop the recording, and you might wish to